Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei met Ravel early and fall in love with her part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support the LIONHEART021 the Snow Wolf for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in description. Let's start this video. After school, after the meeting ended, Azazel and Roswis left because they still have things to do as teachers. The org prepared for the school festival with the remaining members. Looks like me and Kiba have to do power-related tasks. I then glanced at Butchu. She's looking at the documents used at the meeting and is reading it. She still hasn't returned to her good mood. What should I do? If I don't reconcile with her before the game, I'm scared that it might cause difficulties. Apologizing, it seems like she won't forgive me unless I acknowledge the cause and apologize to her, and I don't know the cause of it. It happened when I was having my head all puzzled over it. The light runs through the top of the table. The light drew a circle and turns into a shape of a magic circle. It's a familiar symbol. Phoenix. Kaneko-chan mutters. That's right. It's exactly like Kaneko-chan said. This is the magic circle of Phoenix. It's a small magic circle which has the size to appear on top of the table, so is it a communication type? But who? Don't tell me it's Razor. What does he want? I was in suspicions, but from the magic circle a holographic image was projected and the face of a young woman appears. She has a high-class atmosphere and looks. She has her hair up and adorned with expensive-looking accessories. Akasama. Ravel made a shocking voice. Akasama. Ravel's mother. So that means she is the wife of the current head of the house of Phoenix, which also makes her the mother of Razor. She's pretty. She looks like she is in her 20s. Since she is a devil, I don't know her real age, but she certainly looks like Ravel. How do you do, Ravel? Sorry for the call suddenly. I couldn't get any time, so I ended up calling at this hour. In the humans world Japan, it's still school time, right? Why yes, it certainly is, but why did you call all of a sudden? When Ravel asks, Lady Phoenix says, are Ria-san and Sekurute-san here? The one who was called by her is Butchu and me. Why me? Butchu stands in front of the projection. How do you do, Abasama? It's been a while. Ria-san. How do you do? It certainly has been a while. And the lady looks around. Is she looking for me? I positioned myself where she can see me immediately. Hello. I'm Haidu Issei. Hello to you too. This is our first time meeting like this, isn't it, Haidu Issei, son of the Sekurute? I apologize for introducing myself like this. And no. So do you have some business with me? I ask while acting politely. Yes, I thought I should greet you properly. Normally, I should go and greet myself to Ria-san, who is in charge of the Haidu residence and the academy which my daughter will be staying at, but there were reasons why we couldn't visit. You know, since the demands of the Phoenix's tier are increasing, so maybe they don't have time because of it. Biba whispers to my ears. I see House of Phoenix are the main suppliers for the Phoenix's tiers after all. I heard that there are emergency demands on the Phoenix's tiers and that they can't keep up with the supplies, so the lady must be with it as well. That must be hard. It's much appreciated, seriously. Butchu replies while smiling. Not at all, Obasama. Your words would be enough. Please leave Ravel to us. I'm truly sorry, Ria-san. For having you take care of Razor after the game and also having you look after Ravel. It seems like she isn't saying it with bad intentions. I thought they would hold a grudge against us because the engagement was cancelled, but it seems like they don't even have a bit of it. There are so many big-hearted people in the House of Phoenix. But for Butchu, it must be complicated. After all, she couldn't decline the transfer of Ravel and to look after her. Then the lady looks at me. Also, Haidu Issei-san. Please especially look after my daughter. And me too. And she emphasized the word especially. Of course, I would look after. Why yes, of course. But Butchu is also here, and there are people who can look after her better than me in our club. Yes. Of course, by entrusting my daughter Ravel to Ria-san and everyone else, then she would have no trouble at the school in the underworld. But, what I would like to ask of you is different from that. Would you please protect her so no weird pests would come near her? By having the Sekurute who has gained many achievements next to her, then both my husband and I can feel assured. Weird pests. So she's telling me to look after her so no guys would come near her in the humans world. I'm also a guy you know well, I won't do anything like laying my hands on Ravel. She's my important junior. She's cute, but I won't lay my hands on her. I understand. I don't know how much I can do, but I will protect your daughter. When I said that, the lady made a bright expression. And besides me, Ravel has her face very red. Hey, what happened, Ravel? For a moment, the face of Butchu who appeared within my sight looked sad, but was that just my eyes? I thank you very much, Ravel. Yes, Akasama. You know what you must do? You have to support Ria-san, and you have to listen to your seniors, and on top of that you have to deepen your relation with Haidu Issei-san. As the daughter from the House of Phoenix, work very hard so you don't tarnish the name of our house, okay? Of course. Looks like the mother and daughter are talking about something. I don't know why, but Ravel has her face red and it looks like she is filled with spirits. And lastly, Haidu Issei-san. The lady talks to me again. Why yes. I hear that your dream is to become a high-class devil. Yes, it is, and my daughter is currently my bishop. I traded with Razor. Why yes, I have heard. Please remember it very well. My daughter is free. She is my bishop. She doesn't belong to Razor. Very well. Why yes. You understood. That's something I already know, but well, I just nod my head just in case. Hearing that, the lady nods her head. She looks satisfied. Why? My business here is done. Ria-san, Haidu Issei-san, and everyone, please forgive my sudden introduction. And it's time now. Ravel, behave in a manner where you won't make a shame as a lady. Yes, Akasama. Now then, everyone. Goodbye. Flash, the light brightens, it then turns into a shallow light and disappears. The greetings of Lady Phoenix which came here like a storm. It must be due to worrying about her daughter and the greetings to us. Though there were things I'm not sure of. I was in doubts and made a sigh, and Butchu who was about to leave the room unsteadily on her foot appears within my sight. Ooh Butchu, where are you going? When I asked, Butchu stops and she mutters without turning around. Ice, will you protect me? Why do you ask such a thing suddenly? I don't know, but my answer is obvious. Of course, I will protect Butchu. And Asia. Eh? Yes, I will also protect Asia. And Akeno-san. That is obvious. But what happened, suddenly asking me such a thing? I don't get it. I don't get what Butchu's intention are at all. But, Butchu asks with a lower tone. Hey Ice. Why yes, do you, what am I? Who am I? I don't get the meaning of this question but to me Butchu is Butchu and the moment I said that, Aka. She scolds me mixed with the sound of her crying. Butchu rushes away from the spot and she left the clubroom. Ria's on Asama. Asia goes after Butchu. Asia turns to me after she reaches the door. Her eyes are soaked with tears. Why is Asia crying? Ai-san. You are horrible. It's too much. Why can't you understand Anasama's feelings? Saying that, Asia goes after Butchu. Having Asia also say that to me, I just stood there dumbfounded. Wait a sec. What's the meaning of this? Why is Asia also mad at me? That wasn't right, Ice-kun. Tiba makes a sigh. And not right as in what? That, precisely. Geez, you are so I can understand very well what the girls are going through. Exactly. It's natural for Ria's and Asia-chan to get mad. Akeno-san also sounded mad. Even Akeno-san. Even I, who is dense at these sorts of things, thought you were a bit off, Ice. Even Zenobia looks at me with her eyes half closed. Moo. Ice-kun, sure is a no-no. Poor Ria-san. Even Irina was mad. You're the worst. Ooh oh. I just received the coldest you are the worst quote from Kaneko-chan. I don't know what I did wrong. I just don't know. To begin with, maybe I should go after her. I tried to leave, but I was stopped by Akeno-san. The current Ice-kun will just hurt her more even if you go after her, so don't. Seriously? Is it that serious? But it's my fault, right? My fault. I really don't know. No, I actually have a maybe kind of guess, but inside me that possibility is very unlikely. It's basically impossible, that's why I don't understand shit. I started to get confused even more thinking about it. Hey Gasper. Am I really bad here? I asked my junior. Jayasuke says it in apologetic manner while twitching his body. Yes, I think you are very bad. Even Gasper says that to me. I felt down. Then Ravel asks while panicking. This is my mother and my fault, right? I'm sorry. Is it Ravel's fault? It seemed like Butchu tried to leave after the communication between the Phoenix mother and child. Akeno-san places her hand on Ravel's shoulders. Ravel-chan doesn't have to worry about it. Ice-kun's the most at fault here because he never tried to think about the crucial thing between Ria's and himself until now. Akeno-san cheers her up like that and she started to prepare for tea after urging Ravel to sit on the sofa. It looks like I'm the biggest villain here. Ooh, what am I supposed to do? Scene change. After the berating he received from his club mates about his behavior, we find our protagonist aimlessly walking through the streets of Kuo. He couldn't stand the stifling atmosphere in the clubroom any longer, along with the disapproving looks from his friends. He needed some fresh air. He needed to be alone. No matter how hard he tried though, he couldn't get the words his friends said to him out of his mind. He felt hurt, he felt betrayed and most importantly he felt alone. Why couldn't they understand? He had his own demons to deal with. As he thought of this, a flash of black passed through his mind. Blackwing's cruel sneer on her face, mocking tone of voice. Will you die for me? Issei stumbles as he walks. I don't want a filthy low-class devil like you talking to me. He grabs onto his face. Ahahaha. Yeah, you are right. It was a very royal date. Thanks to it, I was very bored. Issei suddenly started to hyperventilate. I don't want a rotten brat like you calling my name. He grabbed his chest in a vain attempt to alleviate his mental anguish. Ice-kun. Please save me. This devil is trying to kill me. I love you. I love you so much. That's why, let's defeat this devil together. Issei felt all the negative emotions he's repressed over the last few months boil to the surface. He can feel the facade he puts on to hide his deeply scarred heart slowly cracking. He didn't realize it, but there were tears flowing from his eyes. Why? Why couldn't they understand? He's helped them all fight their own inner demons. He was there for them when they needed him. So why? Why did he feel so alone right now? What did he do to deserve such treatment? Is this karma for constantly peeping on girls? For being pervert? Is he destined to be alone? To be misunderstood? Didn't he deserve some help? Did they ever stop to think that maybe he is still haunted by the ghosts of his past, just as they were? Is he supposed to be the guy who has to be strong for everybody while they ignore his pain? Issei was tired. Tired of being the doormat for everyone to walk over. Even before he became a devil, people constantly looked down on him. Whether it was because he was a pervert or some other reason, he was never taken seriously. People never cared much for his feelings or thoughts. He thought he found a home with the orc. Finally, people who cared. People who treated him with respect. But it seems, like always, he's been deluding himself. Like how he put the circumstances of his resurrection at the back of his mind, or how Riaz and Sona ignored fallen angels killing in their territory. The same way he ignored the hints dropped by Venelana Gremory about his future position. It seemed like at the end, he was a glorified trophy to be worn on the arm of the Gremory princess to be paraded to other high-class devils, the same devils who sneer at his existence. He wanted to hurt them. He wanted to don his balance breaker and show them who's inferior. He's the Sekiryuite, damn it. He's not some prized stallion to be paraded. Issei felt his anger skyrocket. Once again those repressed negative emotions came bubbling to the surface and a snarl formed on his face. His body was slowly being coated in a red aura as he started losing control. He felt his consciousness slipping slow fading into the abyss. It would be so easy to give up. Partner. A voice roared in his mind snapping him out of his funk. Issei's head snapped up, his eyes looking focused once more. The voice of his partner seemingly dispelling the darkness. As he regained his bearings, he took a look around and couldn't stop the bitter smile that surfaced on his face at the location his body unconsciously took him to. The fountain Akuo Park. The place where it all began or where it all ended depending on how you look at it. You okay there, partner? The deep and ancient voice of his partner Drake, the Red Dragon Emperor and one of the two heavenly dragons, resounded throughout his mind. Issei let out a genuine smile at the concerned voice of his partner. Yeah, Drake, I'm okay. Sorry about worrying you, it's just some unwanted memories surfacing. Said Issei with a defeated expression on his face. He hated feeling weak and helpless. I know, from what I could glean from your memories, it's the crow that's bothering you again. Stated Drake. Yeah, no matter how hard I try, I just can't get her or her words out of my mind. Was she right about me all along? Am I really such a hopeless loser that even after defeating a god, I still feel insecure about myself over the words of a weak fallen angel? Questioned Issei. It wasn't often that he shared his thoughts and feelings in such a manner, but Drake was his partner. He knew everything there is to know about Issei, even the things he didn't even know about himself. He knew he could trust his friend to help him. That thought made him smile forlornly, relying on friends to help him out. He didn't know if he could go back to the way they were. Don't beat yourself about it, partner. I mean, in the beginning you were pretty pathetic. Oh, I protested Issei with an indignant look on his face. Let me finish, you moron. Exclaimed an annoyed Drake. Okay, sheesh, don't get your panties in a twist. Said Issei. He could almost feel Drake's eyebrow. Do dragons have eyebrows? Twitching and tick marks appearing on his face. As I was saying, you were pretty pathetic in the beginning. You were weak and clueless to the true scope of what you were getting into. You just charged in recklessly, which isn't necessarily a bad thing as dragons are very straightforward creatures. But even though you were weak, I watched you defeat a fallen angel after only a few days of being a devil. I watched you masterfully outwit and defeat Riser Phoenix, a high-class devil who was far stronger than your king. Then I started to really pay attention. I watched you fearlessly take on Kakabiel, a powerful foe who survived the Great War. I watched you battle the hacker Yuku, who is said to be the strongest to ever exist, to a standstill. A month later you achieved Balance Breaker in almost record time and defeated a god. You also sent the wielder of the true Longinus scurrying with his eye missing and his tail between his legs. What I'm trying to say, partner, is that no matter what people have told you in the past or what they will say in the future, hold your head up high and be proud of who you are and take pride in your achievements. Stop caring about what other people think and be who you are and were meant to be. You are the Sekiryuite. Some might call you the weakest, but I've had enough hosts to say with the utmost confidence that you are by far the best. You may not have natural talent like most, but you have something that others will never have. An indomitable will to live and to win. So wipe that frown off your face and do what my partner does best and go leer at some poor woman's tits," said Drake. What started off as inspirational and moving finished off with a deadpan tone. Issei wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. So he settled for a mixture of both. But truly, the words of his partner really touched him deeply. To hear such high praise from one of the most powerful beings to ever exist is a real boost to one's confidence, especially one as fragile as Issei. But as he thought over Drake's words he came to realize something, he was right. For so long he so desperately sought the approval of those around him, constantly trying his hardest to please everyone, sometimes at a cost to himself. All that it has ever brought him was pain. Even now it seemed others expected him to go out of his way and prove something that was already plainly obvious. If giving up your organs and almost dying on several occasions isn't good enough to prove you care deeply for someone, then I don't know what is. He was always expected to do these things, jumping through hoops like some circus monkey. But he was tired of trying to live up to everyone's expectations, trying to be a hero, trying to be the nice guy for the first time in his life. He wanted to be selfish. He wanted to do things for himself. He worked so hard at constantly trying to fix the problems of others that he ignored his own issues. Well, that won't be the case any longer. Thank you, Drake, you're right. I'm always concerned with what others think that I forget to just be myself and live my life to my own principles. I'm done with always going out of my way to make others happy. I'm Haidu Issei, the Sekiryuite, and I'll do whatever the fuck I want," exclaimed Issei as he stood up on the bench and punched his fist to the sky as he declared his intent, ignoring the incredulous stares the people around him were giving him. Haha, now that sounds more like my partner. So what are you going to do now?" questioned Drake. Issei was brought back to earth at the voice of his partner. He sat back on the bench and scratched his head. "To be honest with you, Drake, I'm not really sure. I don't want to be around the orc for a while. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I hate them or anything. I'm more disappointed. If anything, I still consider them friends, but I doubt it will be the same as before. The bond we shared kind of fractured in that room. I won't go out of my way to make them happy anymore. I'll try to be a good friend and comrade, but it ends there. For now though, I need to train. We have 2 months till the raiding game against Saraerg, and I need to up my game if I stand any chance against him," Issei expressed thoughtfully. It was a real conundrum to him. Saraerg seemed like an unmovable obstacle in his path, and his regular training just wasn't going to cut it. He could feel that he was on the brink of something, but there's a brick wall stopping him from getting to the finish line. The Bale Devil is indeed a worthy opponent. He is like you in many regards. No natural talent, but he has honed his body into a dangerous weapon. However, he has the advantage in that his body is naturally superior to yours, as he was born a pureblood devil, while you are a reincarnated human. He has greater natural strength and stamina than you do," pointed out Drake. As blunt as it sounded, Issei knew that Drake spoke nothing but the truth. "I know, Drake, and that's the problem at the moment. Although I've gotten really good at using the boosted gear, my base level is still not good enough to keep up with someone like him. I need to somehow find a way to increase my natural strength and abilities to the point where my body can rival that of a pureblood devil, or in my case a dragon's body, that's it," exclaimed Issei as he jumped from the bench in excitement. "Firstly, ouch, dragon here, sensitive hearing and all. Secondly, what are you on about?" inquired Drake. Issei had a giddy smile on his face and seemed to be bursting at the seams. "That's it, Drake, I figured out how we can boost my base level. In biology class we've been learning about the heart and how it pumps blood throughout the entire body. So with that in mind, if we applied it to me and our situation," stated Issei as he mentally explained his plan to his partner. To say that Drake was surprised was an understatement. The plan Issei outlined was crazy, bordering on suicidal. "You do realize that the chances of you dying is almost guaranteed, right?" Drake pointed out shrewdly. He wasn't about to let his partner do something rash and get himself killed. But to his amazement, Issei just smiled serenely at his words. "I know, Drake. I know better than most what you mean. However, I've put my life and my body on the line more times than I can count for the sake of others, sometimes even strangers. It's time I did the same for myself. This isn't about proving myself to Riaz and the others or impressing the devils. This is about me. Breaking out of the cocoon that's been crafted around me. This is about me getting rid of the metaphorical leash tied around my neck and break free and take to the skies to soar like the dragon I was meant to be. I have an opponent in front of me. He is powerful. He is worthy. I think we should let him be the first in a long line of people to experience the full might of not Haidu Issei, the pawn of Ria's Gremory, but Haidu Issei, the unstoppable Sekiryuite. Besides, if you think I'm going to die a virgin, you must be out of your fucking mind," exclaimed Issei. Well, he started his monologue with a cool expression on his face, he ended it with a perverted leer. Greg couldn't help the momentary deadpan expression on his face before he broke out into chuckles. There truly isn't a boring moment with you around, partner. Very well, Drake the Red Dragon Emperor will aid you on this quest till the end, if it comes to that. Stated Drake proudly as he understood his partner's resolve. Issei smiled happily at those words. Thanks Drake for having my back. And don't worry, as long as the chances are not zero, I will survive. I have far too much left to do to die anyway. You said before one of my best qualities is my indomitable will. Well, let me demonstrate to you once more, partner. Let me show you that I won't lose, that I will overcome it just like I have every other obstacle that's been set in my path and come out stronger than before. Stated Issei as he clenched his fist with a challenging smile on his face. Drake just chuckled in his mind, his host truly was the most stubborn person he's come across, including himself, which says a lot. They descended into a comfortable silence after that and enjoyed the peace and quiet of the park. Issei though had a lot on his mind, his fractured relationship with his friends aren't a priority at this point, his focus is on getting stronger. He already knew what he needed to do, but he needed a secluded place to do it. He needed to see a certain fallen angel about organizing it. He also needed Ravel's help as she had access to a certain item that he could use to strengthen himself further. Scene change. It's been a few hours since the episode with Issei has passed. The atmosphere was a somber one at the Orc Clubroom. Everyone was going along their normal business, but there seemed to be a distinct lack of energy. The entire Orc was gathered with the exception of Azazel, Roswis and Ravel. I haven't seen Ice in a while. Where is he? Zenobia thought out loud. He's probably peeping on the kendo club or something. Ah, what a tragedy, the childhood friend of an angel has fallen to such depravity. But don't worry Ice-kun, I will save you. Exclaimed Irina as she put her hands together and prayed to the heavens as her friend just looked at her with a deadpan look. The rest of the Orc just smiled at the byplay between the two friends. Their thoughts then turned to their favorite pawn. Everyone had their own thoughts on the matter, but Riaz just sat at her desk looking desolate. Akeno hated seeing her master and best friend looking so depressed. Cheer up Riaz, I'm sure Ice-kun will come around soon enough. Just give it time. Spoke Akeno with a smile on her face. Akeno-san is right, Riaz Onasama, I-san will definitely come around. Exclaimed Asia exuberantly. Riaz smiled softly at her. Asia is right Riaz-san, Ice-kun can be dense as a brick, even more so than Zenobia, stated Irina, while Zenobia wore a sour expression on her face. See, you have a lot of support here Riaz. You just need to be a little more straightforward with him. That's how Rainer got him to go on a date with her. Chuckled Akeno before the smile was wiped off her face, as well as the faces of most of the club members, and a growing sense of dread began to pool in their stomachs. Rainer? Shouted Riaz, Akeno, Asia and Kiba with Kaneko looking on with a growing sense of realization. What's going on? Whimpered Gasper as he crawled back into his box. That why he was the way he always seemed to look at us in fear at times, I understand now, said Akeno with a miserable expression on her face. How could she not have realized it sooner? The man she loves more than anything was going through so much, and she just ignored it. It's because of him that she finally accepted herself and made peace with her father after years of resentment and self-hate. She should have understood his feelings better than anyone. She never hated herself more than in that moment. And after all this time Rainer-sama was still, mumbled Asia as she covered her mouth and let her tears fall down her face. She couldn't believe she let her Ice-san suffer through that and never even think to ask him about his feelings. She just selfishly wanted him to confess to Riaz Onasama so she could be next. She felt like praying to God, but at this moment she didn't believe she deserved salvation, especially considering that it was Ice-san who asked for her to be able to pray again. Kaneko was silent, but in her mind she was berating herself for being so inconsiderate to someone she loves. She was supposed to be his hellcat that stood by him through everything. All the claims of having his babies and being closer to him, but she missed the emotional pain that must have been plaguing him all this time with, made her feel worse, considering she was a Nekashu who knew Senjutsu, so feeling emotion should be second nature to her, but she failed. Hiba just clenched his fist and directed his anger at himself for being such a bad friend. When Ice-kun was suffering in silence, he just overlooked it, even though Ice-kun did his best, even taking multiple punishments, in order to help him overcome his own demons. Some best friend I am. He thought to himself. Oh no, can someone please explain what's going on? Inquired Irina with Zenobia, Gasper and looking on curiously. Akeno took the time to explain the circumstances behind Issei's and Rainer's relationship, to the point where she brutally murdered him. To say the others were horrified was an understatement. To think that the perverted pawn who always smiled for everyone had such a traumatic incident happen to him, and only a few months ago at that. Zenobia and Irina suddenly felt horrible about their behavior towards their friend love interest. They needed to apologize as quickly as possible. Poor I-senpai, and we ganged up on him before. Whimpered Gasper sadly with tears in his eyes. That snapped everyone including Riaz to attention. They suddenly felt disgusted at their earlier behavior, but also extreme worry for their lovable pawn who has been missing since. They started to have a very bad premonition occur to them concerning their behavior towards their friend love interest. Riaz was the first to snap into action. "Ice," she exclaimed with worry. What had she done? How could she be so selfish and uncaring towards the man she loves? The man who gave everything for her and her peerage's happiness. She started to feel like scum for doubting him and acting like some spoiled brat. She needed to find Ice. She needed to apologize and beg for his forgiveness. These were the thoughts running through her mind. Similar thoughts ran through the minds of everyone else as she prepared the transport magic circle with tears running down her face. Flash. After a red flash, the orc found themselves in the basement of the Haidu residence. They immediately ran to the living room as fast as they could. "Ice," cried Riaz as she ran, only to come to a screeching halt as spotted a nonchalant Azazel sipping on some tea and a nervous-looking Ravel sitting next to him. She immediately questioned him. "Azazel, what are you doing here?" "Never mind that, have you seen Ice?" cried Riaz hysterically. The members of the orc behind her nodding in agreement with grim faces. Azazel put down his tea and looked at them with a blank look on his face that unnerved them and spoke the words that shattered them. "Ice is gone," he said with a monotone voice. "What?" exclaimed the orc with Riaz and Akena looking stricken as the news, what Laisha just cried to herself. It felt as if the whole world was crumbling around them. The only thought on their minds was to find Ice as soon as possible. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. The members of the orc were stunned to silence. They were horrified by the thought that Issei may have strayed. More so, if he strayed because of the way they treated him. The worst case scenarios were going through their minds at a rapid pace. Some were tame, some were horrifically fatal. Poor Asia couldn't handle the news and promptly fainted. Luckily Zenovia's reflexes were quick enough to stop her friend from hitting the ground. She proceeded to deposit Asia on the couch while the orc were finally regaining their mental bearings. If they paid enough attention to their surroundings, they would have noticed the mischievous glint in Azazel's eyes or the face palm of Ravel, who couldn't help but wonder if the fallen angel governor was a bit touched in the head. After finally snapping out of their shock, the orc snapped into action. "What do you mean Ice is gone?" thundered Riaz. She was on the brink of having a mental breakdown. Her beloved Ice was missing. Was he taken? Was it the Cows Brigade? Did he leave of his own volition? Was it because she pushed too hard? Did she go too far in her attempts to progress their relationship? These were some of the thoughts currently plaguing her mind. She felt disgusted with herself for her treatment of the man she loved more than anything. How could she be so thoughtless in the way she treated him? She only prayed to Mayu-sama that she wasn't too late to make it right. Similar thoughts ran through the minds of the rest of the orc as their guilt from earlier was compounded by this new situation. Ravel watched this scene with a stoic expression on her face. She was still highly upset with the way they treated Ai-sama earlier, however she was mature enough to keep her thoughts to herself, for now. She was extremely well-mannered and polite girl, her pure-blood upbringing saw to that, however she could also be quite vindictive when situations called for her to be, and hurting the man she held in the highest regard certainly qualified as such a situation. She took a deep breath though and exhaled. Ai-sama wouldn't want her to take some petty form of revenge on his friends, even though they deserved it. She would be the bigger woman. Maybe then her Ai-sama will finally notice her feminine charms, and maybe just maybe. Ravel's fantasy sequence. She stood on a wide open field of the greenest grass ever seen. Flowers of various kinds were blooming all around her. She wore a simple white sundress with her golden blonde hair flowing in the wind. She could feel the soft grass tickle her bare feet as her impossibly blue eyes stared at the resolute gaze of her beloved. He seemed to glow in the sunlight with fireflies floating all around him. His soft brown hair was windswept as his eyes practically devoured her nubile body. She could feel her womanhood throb wonderfully at the intensity of his gaze. Her stomach did flips as she stared at his shirtless body until she was snapped out of it at the sound of his deep, husky voice. "Ravel," he said. Just hearing him utter her name with such a profound sense of love was orgasmic to her. She was definitely going to need a change of underwear soon. That's assuming her underwear survived what she hoped was about to come. Ai-sama, she whispered the name of her beloved. Her eyes shining with love and devotion. Her body shuddered as he gently cupped her cheek. She shut her eyes as he leaned in. "Ravel, my beautiful Ravel. I'm sorry for being blind to what's been in front of me all this time. I promise you now though, I plan to spend the next few days imprinting my love onto your beautiful body," whispered her Ai-sama as her body shuddered in orgasmic bliss at his erotic words. Her back hit the grass and he straddled her, leaning in to seal her lips with his . She could feel his breath on her skin as he ended Ravel's fantasy sequence. "Uhehehe," giggled Ravel creepily to herself with a goofy expression on her face, with a line of drool going down the corner of her mouth, cheeks tinted red from heavily blushing with a little blood leaking from her nose. Her perverted smile wasn't helping much in regards to holding up her dignified Oju-sama image either. Luckily she snapped out of it quickly enough by the one-sided shouting match happening between Riaz and Azazel, who just seemed highly amused at the situation, with Akeno occasionally chipping in. Asia-san also seemed to be back among the land of the conscious, although she looked inconsolable. Ravel counted her lucky stars that nobody caught her having one of her perverted delusions about Ai-sama. She doesn't want him to think of her as a shameful woman after all. Anyway, it seems that Riaz-sama was still livid about Ai-sama's disappearance, but more importantly it seems Azazel-sama still hasn't given them the full story and just appears to be enjoying the situation his misleading words have created. Honestly, what an insufferable man. I wonder how Shimhaza-sama and Barakiel-sama put up with this man and his nonsense for so long. Thought Ravel before she made an effort to clear the situation by coughing loudly into her hand to get the attention of the occupants of the room. She succeeded as all eyes were on her now. Looking as dignified and elegant as ever, a striking contrast from her earlier perverted expression, she took the floor. I think there has been a misunderstanding. Despite what Azazel-sama's words seemed to imply. Ai-sama did not run away or go astray. He simply filed for a leave of absence from school, as well as informing his clients that he will be unavailable for the next 2 months due to taking a training trip to prepare for the upcoming rating game. Spoke Ravel eloquently. It seems her words had a desired effect as the tension immediately left the room and an overwhelming sense of relief filled the hearts of everyone present. Well, almost everyone is certain fallen angel governor was crouching in a corner and pouting petulantly like a child. Despite being a well-bred Oju-sama, Ravel couldn't stop herself from rolling her eyes at the overgrown man-child. Said man-child decided it was finally time to speak up. Yeah, Ice came to me earlier today. He asked me to help him out by filing a leave of absence at school. He'll still get the work done. He said he'd have his familiar his them up at the end of each day. He also wanted me to find him a secluded space to train in without disturbance, so I hooked him up with one through the help of my connections, because I'm cool like that. Finished Azazel with a cool smirk on his face while striking a pose. Riaz, well relieved that her beloved pawn didn't stray, couldn't stop herself from almost snarling at Azazel. How dare he? Ice is her pawn. She should have been notified immediately. At the very least he should have requested permission. Didn't he trust her enough to speak to her about this? She immediately stopped her train of thought as she recalled the state of affairs between her and Ice. Did he feel that he needed to get away from her? She felt her heart break at the thought. She loves Ice more than anything, but with the way things were and the things that were said, their potential relationship seems to be even further away from her. She cursed herself for being so rash and petulant in her reactions to him and trying to pressure him into confessing. For one of the first times in her life she felt a deep pang of regret. While these issues were important in her mind, she needed to get back to the crux of the matter and find out just why Azazel thought it a good idea to allow her pawn to leave without consulting her. And why, Azazel, did you think it was a good idea to allow Ice to leave without my permission? Questioned Riaz in a frigid tone, accompanied by an equally cold gaze. She was backed up by Akeno, who glared at the fallen angel governor. The others, well relieved that their friend was okay, were also highly curious as to what was going on. They were hoping to find Issei and apologize to him for the way they treated him. But it seems that they will have to wait a little longer. They only hoped it wasn't too late and their relationship with him weren't fractured beyond repair. In response to Ria's question, the perpetually jovial archangel narrowed his eyes and adopted an expressionless mask on his face that greatly unnerved the members of the org. They've never been on the receiving end of the governor's ire before, and due to the usual dynamic between him and Issei, it's easy to forget that the man in front of them was one of the most dangerous in existence. Ravel quirked an elegant eyebrow at the drastic change in character for the governor, secretly impressed with his approach. Riaz would never admit it out loud, but she was terrified right now. She tried hard to not let the quiver in her knees show. You make it sound as if Ice is a prisoner here, Riaz. That he has no free will of his own. Is that the case? Questioned Azazel with a steely tone in his voice. He was giving off an extremely oppressive aura to those around him that made them start sweating. Riaz faltered in her indignant anger at the situation and widened her eyes at the question. How could he say such a thing? Is that why Ice left without telling her? Because he felt she wouldn't let him go otherwise? Of course not, Azazel. Riaz spluttered. I was just concerned about him and as his king, I don't want anything happening to him, she added. It was the truth to some extent. She knew how close Ice and Azazel were and wasn't too keen on telling him about the altercation that happened earlier today. She knew for sure that it would not end well for her, at least. Azazel just stared at her with scrutinizing expression on his face that made her feel like an ant under a magnifying glass. She felt as though her entire soul was being laid bare before this man, and she didn't like this feeling at all. After a few seconds, that actually felt like a lifetime to her, he finally broke out into his usual goofy laugh, and Riaz as well as the orc released a breath. They didn't realize they were holding it, having his ire directed away from them. What they didn't realize was that Issei already briefed Azazel on everything that happened earlier. Flashback. Azazel just sat in silence as he digested everything Ice just told him about what happened. He was severely disappointed in the behavior of the orc, especially Akeno. He's been around long enough though to know that sometimes things like this happened. They were still young and prone to make mistakes. He would never admit this out loud, but he has a soft spot for the lovable pervert. He's never had any children of his own, so he couldn't help but look to this generation's heavenly dragons, whom he had a direct role in guiding and training them, as a surrogate family. He was surprised though at how calmly Ice was taking it, especially considering what an emotionally driven person he is. There's also the fact that he's a dragon. He should be counting his lucky stars that he doesn't have an emotionally distraught secretary rampaging around Kuo. Finally coming back to the current conversation, he looked at the solemn Ice and couldn't help but ask, "Are you doing okay, Ice?" Azazel questioned softly. Ice looked at the fallen angel governor with a determined look on his face. Regardless of his own problems and insecurities, Ice trusted Azazel and deeply respected the man for not only his intellect, but also the key role he played in bringing about peace between the factions. Which was why he wasn't afraid to open up to the man, as opposed to the orc, as he knew he would get only the truth from him. "Honestly, I can say that I'm doing fine. I'm certainly not 100%. It hurts, you know." The words that were said, and in some cases weren't said. I don't hate them for what happened, but in my heart I can't help but resent them a little. Not to the point of hurting them, but just to the point that my guard will always be up around them. I know I promised you I'd take care of Akeno-san, but it doesn't look like I'd be able to keep that promise. I'll try my best to protect her on the battlefield and offer it as a favor to you, but that's as far as it goes. I have my own path to walk, and I plan to take that first step by myself. For too long have I dallied about in mediocrity instead of rising to the top as I know I can. That's why I need to get away for a while. I'm on the brink of something, I can feel it, call it the next stage to my evolution if you will. I'm going to be leaving either way, but I'd prefer if I had your support." These were the resolute words spoken by Issei. Looking into the young man's eyes and seeing his determination, Azazel knew he wasn't going to be winning this argument, not that he wanted to either. He agreed with Issei in that a young man with such potential should go the extra mile to cross over that final hurdle standing in their way, the difference between being good and being great. He just nodded his head and found a fixed location far away from civilization for Issei, with the promise of not revealing his whereabouts to anyone. Flashback end. Back to the conversation at hand. Azazel just finished his chuckles before giving his reasons to the orc. "You don't have to worry about Ice, he's strong enough to take care of himself. I'm sure you realize that he surpassed you and everyone in your peerage a long time ago. He also spent a month on a secluded mountain being harassed by a dragon king, so he's used to this kind of situation. He's on the verge of evolving in terms of his power. His aura feels more focused and driven. He's going to the next level, and I'm not too sure if Ravel will be ready for the unstoppable force of nature that's going to run straight into him at the rating game," said Azazel with a smirk on his face. The others were bewildered by the word of the fallen angel. To pay such high praise to someone is no laughing matter. I suggest you use this time to properly hone your skills so that you can at least keep up with not just Sarerg and his peerage, but Issei as well," stated Azazel as he made to leave the Haidu residence, leaving behind a deeply troubled orc. At the corner of the room sat Ravel, who was all but forgotten by the orc. She also met with Isama before he left, not that she was going to tell them that, just a petty form of revenge on her part. She couldn't help but think back to the meeting. Flashback. Ravel couldn't help but raise her eyebrows at what her beloved Isama just told her. When he came looking for her, she was overjoyed that she could properly apologize for the earlier situation that she and her mother unintentionally caused. Of course, Isama, being the kind and benevolent man that she knows he has, just waved off her apology and told her everything is fine, though she could see the pain behind his eyes. She knew she wasn't in any position to help her hero, so she did the only thing she could: offer the full support if he ever needs anything, which he surprisingly cashed in right away. After explaining his training plans to her and outlining the potential dangers, he asked her for a very special item. "So is it possible to get any Phoenix tears, Ravel? I know they're kind of scarce at the moment, but I'm willing to pay any amount to get even just a bottle," pleaded Ice. Ravel just blushed at how cute he looked with those puppy dog eyes of his. Although what he said was true in that Phoenix tears are extremely rare to obtain. You are correct, Isama and they are scarce, and I don't think we will be able to buy some. But if you give me an hour or so, I can prepare a small batch with my very own tears as the ingredient. I can't tell how we make them, but I can give them to you. Think of it as a small token of my appreciation," stated Ravel with a soft smile in her face as she watched Isama's face light up like a Christmas tree. He rushed over and scooped her up into a fierce hug, earning a cute and demure eep from Ravel's lips as she had an atomic full-body blush at being embraced by her precious Isama. His next words really sent her over the edge though. "This is even better than buy them. I trust Ravel, so your tears will definitely be the best, plus when I drink it, it will be like a part of you will always be with me," said the clueless Casanova, unknowing of the effect such word had on the maiden heart of Ravel. The poor girl fainted with a blissful expression on her face, leaving behind a bewildered Ice to only scratch his head in confusion. Flashback end. Ravel smiled happily at the memory. She couldn't help but feel closer to the man she adored. Plus, with the situation as is with Riaz and the orc, she finally had a chance to win his heart for herself. She might be a kind and sweet girl normally, but she is also a woman in love, and she plans to use every advantage she gets to be number one in Isama's heart. He already placed a great deal of trust in her by telling her the plans he made instead of anyone else. She was not going to betray that trust. She just hopes that he comes back to her soon. Stay safe, Isama. Though Ravel with a loving smile on her face. Scene change. As he looked out at the dusty landscape of the mountainous region he was currently residing in, Ice nodded to himself. Satisfied with the place to apply his training ideas. In his grip, held firmly, were 3 bottles of Phoenix tears that Ravel had prepared for him. He smiled softly at the thought of his cute cowhide. She really was a wonderful young woman. After a moment's contemplation he shook his head clear of any thoughts and focused on what he was about to do. "Are you sure you want to go through with this, partner?" questioned Drake. He wasn't really concerned about the health of Ice, as he was confident his partner could survive what they were about to attempt, but more along the lines of a final verification of the deed. "Yeah, I am Drake. I know this is risky, and the chance for death is stupidly high, but I can't back out now. It's do or die for me, literally," stated Ice resolutely. "I understand, partner. I just want you to know you're not the first to attempt this, and I'd like to point out that none of the previous hosts survived the transformation," said Drake. There was an undertone of seriousness in his voice. "I understand, Drake, and I'm ready to face the consequences. I may not be the grandson of the original Lucifer or a descendant of a legendary hero or some prodigy, because when it comes down to it, none of that matters. I finally know who I am and I know where I'm going. For the first time in my life I feel comfortable in my own skin. It doesn't matter what people think of me anymore. I may be a shameless pervert and I'm not some genius, but I have the will to never give up and I fear nothing, not even death," declared Ice with a fierce expression adorning his face worthy of the Red Dragon Emperor. "Ahahaha, well said, partner. I expect nothing less from you. Now that all the mushy stuff is out the way, walk me through your suicidal plan again," queried Drake. Ice just ignored his sarcastic comment and he soldiered on with his explanation. "Ever since the fight with Riser a few months ago, my left arm has been permanently that of a dragon's due to me sacrificing it for power. With that being said, if you have the power to turn any part of my body to that of a dragon's, you can probably undo it as well, which you have already done to my now human devil left arm. I've known you could do that for a while, and the only reason I didn't ask you to undo the dragonification is because the method of extracting power from the arm was way too stimulating. That, however, isn't a concern anymore. It therefore occurred to me that instead of complaining about having a weaker body than a pureblood devil like Sererg, I can make use of the priceless tool I have at my disposal. If you were to change my heart to that of a dragon's, theoretically my entire body would morph along with it, as the heart pumps blood throughout the entire body including the brain via the circulatory system. My body will therefore adopt dragon characteristics, internally, and maybe even some external changes. Theoretically this would enhance my senses' strength, stamina, endurance and probably magical capacity as well to an exponential level, therefore raising my base stats to the point where I don't need to constantly wear my balance breaker for every fight and save it for when it's really needed," explained Ice. "Again, I'd like to point out that nobody ever survived this, but I know you're too stubborn to listen to me. I would like to know why you have the Phoenix tears though, and don't give me the same lie you gave the Phoenix girl about possible injuries in training and having the tears to heal you just in case," questioned Drake. Suddenly Ice had an almost maniacal look on his face as his smile creeped even Drake out. "Do you remember when we fought Volley and I had the idea of using one of the gems that broke out of his sacred gear and take that power for myself, which we succeeded in doing by the way, even though I don't have full access to it?" questioned Ice with Drain, feeling a shiver crawl up his spine at the impending sense of doom he suddenly felt. Ice just continued his explanation without paying any heed to his discomfort. "Yes," prompted Drake cautiously. Not liking at all where this conversation is headed. "Well, if we could absorb and integrate the power of Albion, the direct and complete opposite of you, and succeed, which should have been impossible. What's to stop us from doing the same again? You remember all the strange happenings in the world, don't you? Kiba's holy demonic sword, all the balance breakers currently at play, not to mention the subspecies balance breakers. The system as it is has large holes in it, metaphorically speaking, and I plan to exploit those opportunities for myself. The reason for the Phoenix tears are that before you proceed with transforming my heart, I'm going to directly inject the tears into my heart via syringe. At that moment you should begin the process immediately. While transforming my heart to that of a dragon, I want you to also analyze, adapt and absorb the properties of the Phoenix tears into my bloodstream and make it a permanent effect. Since the Phoenix clan received their abilities from an actual phoenix, which is a being of fire just like you, it will be easier to absorb the power of it when compared to Albion. Therefore when the process is done, I should have a dragon heart and body, with the healing and magical properties of a phoenix flowing through my veins. Finished Ice with an almost smug look on his face after his explanation. Dryag on the other hand was incredulous at the recklessness of his host. Are you out of your mind, boy? If you remember, you had a few hundred years shaved off your lifespan when you absorbed Albion's power, not to mention, after activating the Juggernaut drive a few months ago, you barely have 100 years left to live. The dragonification as it is was a huge risk to your life, as survival is slim to none. By adding this reckless plan to it, you are almost guaranteeing your death," stated Drake bluntly. His host really was an interesting one, and certainly the most likable he's had, and he didn't want him running headfirst to death. Ice though seemed nonplussed at the dragon's reaction, seemingly already accounting for the aforementioned factors. "I've already thought about that, Drake. I don't want to die and I don't plan to anytime soon. What you are forgetting is that the reason taking Albion's power was so brutal was that he is the antithesis of you. Your powers weren't meant to mix. It was unnatural. The Phoenix tears, however, are one of the most magically imbued substances in the world, but more importantly they are the greatest healing item known. By absorbing and assimilating them into my body, my vitality will increase exponentially, along with giving me a high regeneration factor, not to mention my magical capacity should receive an even further boost. If anything, when all is said and done, this should effectively add a few more years to my lifespan," explained Ice. He thought long and hard about this and was willing to take the risk as the rewards were worth it. Drake was silent as he digested all that Ice said and realized that the little bastard had a point. If this really worked, he would receive a major boost, and considering how powerful his host already was, it really is a terrifying thought. It started off as a grin before evolving into a full-blown maniacal laughter by the heavenly dragon. He could almost picture the look on Albion's face when his host smacks around his precious so-called strongest Akriuko to ever live, and man was the image of beautiful one. He really was right in saying that Ice was the best host he ever had. There's never a dull moment with him around. Ice on the other hand just sweat-dropped at the bipolar behavior of the ancient dragon. "I really am surrounded by unstable individuals, Siskin Surziches and Serafal, mad scientists Azazel and Ajuka, battle maniacs Vali and Serair. Damn, why do all the crazies flock to me?" thought Ice depressingly. His so-called normal life really was gone down the drain. Oh well, considering what he was about to do, he can't really call himself fully sane any longer. "Okay partner, you've convinced me. Let's do this. If no, when you succeed you're going to be a whole new person. I'm estimating you will be about 70% dragon, 20% devil and about 10% human. Adding in the Phoenix tears will give you an amazing regeneration factor, which would have already been high due to dragons having one too, on a smaller scale, when compared to a phoenix though. Plus your pathetically abysmal magical capacity should skyrocket from being almost non-existent to probably around high mid-class or low high class in terms of power. Brace yourself partner, this is gonna hurt like a bitch," warned Drake. Ice nodded and extracted all 3 vials of Phoenix tears with a large syringe. He lay on the ground and placed a needle just above the left side of his chest. He took in a deep breath and though about all that has happened in the last few months, from Raynor to deciming a devil, saving Asia and defeating Riser, attaining Balance Breaker, the Juggernaut drive and defeating a god. He really has come a long way from being a hopeless loser at school to the powerful Sekiryuite he was today. He finally had confidence in himself to be free of expectations and opinions of those who thought he needed control. He was finally his own man. He thought about all the people who helped him along the way and was thankful too, from the Orc to Azazel, Ten and Asen, Vali, Kuroka and Ravel. He was ready to say goodbye to this chapter of his life, goodbye to the ghost of Raynor, and goodbye to being the naive and gullible pervert. He was ready to begin the next stage of his life. He was ready to take control of his own destiny. "I'm ready, Drag. This days marks the rebirth of Haidu Issei. My red rebirth," whispered Ice before he injected the entire contents of the syringe into his heart. The last thing he heard before the blindly and unbearable amount of pain racked his body was the voice of his partner. He smiled as he slipped into blissful unconsciousness. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support the LIONHEART021 the Snow Wolf for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story. See you in the next video. Goodbye.